Welcome to From the Editor. Hi, I'm Mike Shearer, Executive Editor of the Columbus Dispatch, and I'm here today with Dispatch reporter Mark Williams to discuss our Sunday cover story on why Columbus needs a $2 billion new passenger terminal at John Glenn International Airport. So Mark, welcome.
Thanks, Mike.
So I guess kind of starters here, why is the airport embarking on this project, which is obviously well underway now of the planning and getting ready to go, but why does Columbus need a new passenger terminal, not just a upgrade of the current one?
So the analogy I always like to use is just a sort of a comparison to the old family car. It's been very reliable. It's taken you on great places, but you're getting a little worried about it because it's getting up in years. Stuff is starting to wear out, getting hard to replace. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you get a little worried about taking the next trip because you're not sure something's not going to break down. And it doesn't have the modern stuff on a car like you would want to have. So that's what a lot of this is about. The airport the existing terminal was built in 1958. It's basically reached the end of its life. Everyone I've talked to says the thing is obsolete. It's just time for a new terminal.
Okay. Now, when I first heard that, I thought that seems a bit, I don't know what the right word is, overkill perhaps, maybe. I don't know if that's the right word, but because I had been out to the airport in quite a while, but I was out there recently, and it is showing more of its signs of age, but it also has the three terminals, the three smaller terminals.
The three concourses.
Three concourses, which require
right.
TSA. It was built way before 9/11, obviously.
Right.
And so the needs of the public have changed a lot.
Yeah, the concourses are a big deal. So when you have three concourses, that means you need three security gates. That means you have three waiting areas. That means you have three concession areas. Mm-hmm. And you don't get everything in all of them. So, with the new terminal, you'll have one security checkpoint, you get through it, and then the whole area will open up to you. And you will have access to everything. All the concessions will be right there. You'll be able to see all the gates easily. It'll be everyone says it's going to be a much more efficient system. And I don't know about you, but when I travel, I can get confused when I'm in an airport.
Yeah.
This is designed to be super simple for people to get around. They're building a new parking garage that will be connected to the relatively new rental car facility. Both will be a really easy walk to the terminal. It'll be simple to understand and move around. I don't think there's going to be any kind of confusion once you're there on where you're going.
Okay. And this is being built on the blue parking lot, the long-term parking lot area, which is on, I guess, the south side of the airport property, but
west of the existing terminal.
So really, we're talking about a whole new footprint.
Yes.
For the airport. The old footprint's going to be used. I got read in your story for plane.
Yeah.
storage.
So once a new terminal opens up, then they'll demolish the existing one and basically become it's assuming that the continued growth of the airport with more traffic goes, that there could be a parking spot for airplanes that, how it is in the morning once you have that rush of planes that are parked at the terminal. Once those planes get off, then you can have another area of planes that will be ready to move in and take the next batch of travelers.
Okay. So $2 billion is obviously a lot of money. Mm-hmm. Where is that money coming from, and how does the financing of this work?
So most of it will be borrowed. The airport will borrow about $1.5 billion, and that will be, they're going to issue bonds like any sort of big project like this. They have about $240 million cash on hand. They're getting some federal grants. It's like $140 million, and then there's some other sources for about $100 million. So the bulk of it will be borrowed money, and that's how it'll be paid off over time, just like you would if you had a mortgage on your home. And so this gets paid off by all the revenue that the airport takes in. So, there's, whenever you park out there at the airport, you're paying a fee. Whenever you go eat something at the concession stand, one of the concession spots in the airport, you're paying, some of that money goes back to the airport. Taxis and the Uber people, they pay a fee for going there. And then the airlines pay fees for landing there. So that's how you're going to pay for it all. And then you would assume, not any clarity, but you would assume that over the course of time, if the airport continues to grow, all that money will continue to collectively grow as well, because there's going to be more and more traffic at the airport.
Okay. Speaking of that, business has been good this year. They are on pace to potentially set a record for passenger traffic this year.
Yes.
Which obviously the history of the airport, there's been airlines come and go. We had the recession in 2008. We had the 9/11 impact on travel for many years. So where are they at this year?
Well, they're good. They're probably going to set a record. They had a record over the summer. Things have been going well on that front. These projects are always kind of risky. I mean, no matter how much planning and preparation you do, there's always the risk that something could go wrong that you can't anticipate. This is one thing I'd ask the airport people about. How do you make sure? Well, there's not a 100% way to do it, just for the things that you talked about, Mike. I mean, you don't know if an airline's going to go out of business, if there's going to be a recession. God forbid if COVID or something like it ever strikes again.
I forget to mention COVID, yes.
Because airport traffic, I mean, it just about disappeared during that period. So all that is there as risk, but the way the design of the airport is laid out, it's meant to be a flexible space to adapt over time as needs change. So hopefully it'll be able to adjust to that and manage to do well. I mean, everybody's been consulted. It seems like that everybody could possibly be consulted on this project to make sure it's the right thing to do.
And we're not at risk of, even if one airline went out of business, and Spirit's having some trouble right now and rumors about them. But they are not dependent like what Cleveland was when United and Continental merged, and there's a whole empty terminal sitting up there that no one's using.
Well, that's always one of the things that was always the selling point for Columbus, was that there was no dominant carrier like there was with the other cities that had become a hub. It tended to happen with Delta and Cincinnati, where they cut back on flights there dramatically. And so we have that advantage where we have more balance. Southwest is the biggest carrier right now, but not like by a huge amount. Mm-hmm. So you would think that if one drops out with the mix, that it won't be the end of the world like it would be at some other airports.
If more people are flying, you would see that someone else might take their void or add more flights.
Well, no one talked about Spirit Airlines a few years ago. And it's become a big plus. Or I mean, one of the big ones we hear about, was Breeze.
Yeah.
So those things can always come along.
There's always a new one coming, perhaps. Okay. So now the new terminal is going to have 36 gates. We have 29 currently. And your story mentions it'll be able to accommodate 13 million passengers. We're going to be at like 9 million this year.
About
9 million or so. That seems like a lot of space, but why are they going with that number? I guess that's their studies over the next 20 years. That's what their forecasts show, that airport growth is going to hit that over time, and if you continue to go up and up and up a little bit every year, that's what you're going to hit. Okay, and so there's a growth there. Okay, and then we already talked a little bit about the one security checkpoint versus 3. I mean, the other reality here is that the current airport was designed way before. I mean, the technology changes, security requirements now.
Yeah,
it's a totally different world.
Oh, it is. I mean, you think about. I remember going to the airport before 9/11, and if I was waiting to see somebody, I could just go straight to the gate and wait for them.
Yeah.
And now, obviously, we're not in that world now, so the security is much different than what it was, and the ability to handle all the traffic and all that kind of thing. And so it's just going to be that efficiency of everybody being in the same spot. I think is going to make it a lot better for everybody in terms of the security and the access to everything that's going to be inside the terminal once you get inside.
Okay, I think the one big change at our airport over the last, I don't know how many years, 10 plus years, has been a lot more non-stop flights to Florida, to not just the major hubs of Atlanta, Chicago, and New York City, places like that. You can now go directly to a lot more places, even fly out west, all the way to the West Coast, direct from Columbus. Does that, we expect that to continue, keep seeing more destinations like that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you just look at our demographics in Central Ohio, we're getting bigger and bigger, we're adding more people, and you would think that kind of growth would continue to demand more traffic at the airport, more business growth. I specifically asked the airport people about Intel and some of the other projects. No one would specifically target and say, this is the reason why we're going to do X or Y. But they did say, overall, if you look at the additional business growth that's taking place in Central Ohio, there will be more demand for flights. And that should continue to drive more traffic at the airport.
Okay. Your story also mentions that 2 of the gates are going to be designed for international flights to handle the biggest airplanes that are out there today. How realistic is it that we're going to? I mean, I know there was a flight to Toronto or a couple of flights to Toronto.
Yeah, and
today.
you can get flights to Cancun too, that kind of thing.
But is Europe, and we ever going to have a day where you get on a plane in Columbus, Ohio, and fly to London or Paris?
One day.
One day.
Now, this was a question I asked Joe Nardoni, the CEO at the airport, and he says when they meet with the big airlines, they are welcomed, but they just don't have quite the numbers yet to demand an international flight like that.
Okay.
But if growth continues to go the way it is, you would suspect that would be the case someday.
Okay. I think there's an Aer Lingus flight now out of Cleveland to Ireland, and they've had a few of those up there, but we've never really had one of those.
Yeah, and Cincinnati's had its fair share.
Yeah.
I think Cincinnati had a Paris flight at one time, if not now. So.
All right. Great. So you mentioned earlier to me that as we were working on this package of stories running today, that Kyle Robertson, our photo editor, went back and built a historical gallery of images from the old Port Columbus days to the John Glenn International days. And tell us a bit about what you saw there.
They are absolutely fabulous. It goes back. So the big kicker for this particular project is for it to be done in time for the 100th anniversary of when the initial airport, when the initial port in Columbus opened. And there are some really cool photos of some people from way back then. You'll see photos of Amelia Earhart's in one of them, and Charles Lindbergh's in another one of them. And there's several other, really interesting historical figures in them. And then in the airport itself, there's going to be, the new terminal is going to have a lot of, there's going to be history that you'll see of the connections of historical flight stuff from Ohio in the airport, and a very robust art collection.
Great.
So,
now, this would be the 3rd or 4th new terminal out there. There was an original one, I think, on the southeast corner of the property, and then the main terminal now.
I think this would be the third one.
Third, okay.
Yeah, because this one's been open since 1958.
Yeah. Okay. Well, obviously, aviation's changed a bit since then. So.
I think so, and then that's part of the reason why you need a new terminal is because not all the gates are able to handle all the different kinds of aircraft, and obviously, aircraft have gotten bigger over time.
Yeah.
Since 1958, and so there is a sense, though, that they can't get much bigger than what they are now. The biggest planes, you really can't get much bigger than what you are now.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, Marco, I hope everyone gets a chance to read your fantastic story this weekend, and appreciate you joining us today on From the Editor. And until next week, we thank you all for listening.